Hi guys, welcome to Olive channel. In today's session, we are going to discuss a very important topic, which is your clauses. So we get questions related to clauses, but we first have to understand the meaning and its types, the basics, and then we'll move to the question types, right? So clause is comprised of a group of words. Very important. It includes a subject and a verb, right? So one subject, one verb. It is different from phrase because in phrases, verb is not there. Now, the subject of a clause can be mentioned or hidden, but the verb is very important in this case. So if I focus on this particular topic, clause, it definitely has a verb. The importance is given to the verb, right? So there can be one clause sentences, two clause sentences, three clause sentences also. But understand whenever we talk about a clause, it is a group of words in which subject and predicate are there, right? They include a subject and a verb. Now, you must understand that any clause can function as an adjective, can function as an adverb, can function as a noun. Remember, right? So here, understand, yeah, that clause can function in as any of these. For example, if I say as an adjective, if I write this, my friend who has autism, so disease, is brilliant at quizzes, is brilliant at quizzes. If I write this sentence particularly, right? Now, who has, where is the subject and the verb? This clause, particularly subject and verb, right? It's an adjective clause. How? Who has, who is brilliant at, as, who is brilliant at quizzes? It is my autistic friend. So autistic friend means, again, somebody who has autism. Autistic friend, we are describing a friend. So adjective clause, right? So how to prove this is adjective clause? If I write this sentence that my autistic friend is brilliant at quizzes, you will understand describing friend means autistic is describing friend means we are describing a noun adjective. Okay. Next, how will it function as a noun? See this example. As a noun, clause as a noun. I cannot remember what happened last night. What happened last night? Now, what happened? This is subject and verb. What happened, right? Now, how do you know it is a noun clause? Because if I ask this question, what you don't remember, right? I cannot remember a thing. A thing, it's a noun. Cannot remember a thing, right? So, noun clause. Similarly, if I write it, how clause can function as an adverb, I will put this example. He put on weight when he stopped running. When he stopped running. Now, if I see the subject and the verb here, what is the clause? He stopped. This is the clause. Why this is adverb clause? Right? Because we are trying to say he put on weight quickly as soon as he stopped running. Right? Put on weight is a verb. So adverb clause, which is talking about when, right? When did this happen? When this verb happened? So adverb, right? He stopped running. So basically understand that a clause is very different from phrase. Phrase doesn't have a subject and a verb, right? Here, clause definitely has a subject and a verb. When she wakes up in the morning, when she wakes up will be a clause because it has verb and as well as subject she. In the morning will be a phrase. There is no subject and there is no verb. So very simply, please understand the distinction. It is very important. Some people confuse a phrase and a clause or are not familiar with this distinction. So If I write when she wakes up in the morning. Now, this is obviously one sentence, but please understand part of it is a phrase, which is a part which is a phrase. This one in the morning is a phrase because it doesn't have a subject and a verb. This part, the first one, is a clause because it has a subject and it has a verb. So, anything which has a subject and a verb is known as your clause. Please understand this very clearly. First thing. Now, type of clauses. Independent clause is one that can stand alone as a sentence, right? One that can stand alone as a sentence. Dependent clause, obviously, as the name suggests, one that is usually a supporting part of a sentence, right? So these are two different things, dependent and independent clause. When I talk about independent clause, it functions on its own to make a meaningful sentence, right? A regular sentence. So, he is a wise man. If I write this, he is a, this looks like a regular sentence, not dependent on anything. It is an independent clause. I like him, independent clause, right? See, you can also combine two independent clauses. So don't think that these can't be combined. If I write a sentence, I want to buy a phone, but I don't have enough money. Right? If I write this sentence, understand we are connecting with but these two are separate independent clauses. First is I want to buy a phone. They give a complete meaning, right? They are meaningful sentences. They give a complete sense. I don't have enough money, right? They are both separate independent clauses which are connected. Okay. Now, dependent clause, they cannot function on their own, right? If you use, say, dependent clause, they leave an idea or thought unfinished, right? It is also called, remember, subordinate. So sometimes you hear this quite often, subordinate clauses. What are these? It's same as dependent clause, right? They their function is to help the independent clause complete the sentence. They cannot be complete sentences on their own. They help independent clause. They give them meaning, right? Now let's see how does this work. When I was dating Mary, comma, I had an accident. I had an accident. Now, please understand in this example, this particular part, when I was dating Mary, it is not giving individual meaning. If I just write this part, it is not giving a complete thought. It is dependent, right? Dependent on what? This sentence, this clause, I had an accident, right? Without this clause, this will have no meaning. So it is a dependent subordinate clause, right? So it gives condition, it gives us the complete information, it completes independent clauses, and that is why they are called subordinate or dependent clauses. As simple as that. Okay, now I've told you how different functions are there, how it can be adverbial clause, noun clause, verb clause, you know that. But why you should care about clauses or why identification of clause is important, that is what you need to understand. Now, that of course the placement of it is important. If we don't know the importance of clauses, we will not know where to place a particular clause, right? So, okay, I will write here why it is important, so you know placement better in a sentence, right? I'll give you example here. I'll write the same, use the same clause. If I write this, when the game has finished, comma, the king pawn go in the same box. It's a proverb, right? So basically, here this is our adverbial clause. You can understand finished. We're talking about the game that has finished. Time when the activity completed. Here you can see I'm using a comma after a clause. Whether it is required, whether this punctuation mark is not required, how would you know? Because you know clauses that this one, it is an adverbial clause because talking about time when the activity got over, describing verbs, so adverbial clause. But if I write the sentence in a different way, if I say the king and pawn go in the same box when the game has finished, right? Here I did not use punctuation mark or comma because for the same clause, adverbial clause, I'm using it in the end of the sentence, right? So I need a comma afterwards in the first sentence, right? But second sentence, you need to omit the comma. So this is how and why you should have knowledge about clauses because it helps us in better placement, right? So which type of clause is it and where will it be placed in the sentence, how it is adding to the meaning, all that is required when you're doing questions. Now let's check a few questions like how you will be asked in exam. Tear a paper towel in half and dash along the edge. So look closely, looking closer, looked close. You know very clearly that adverb clause is a group of words that function as an adverb in a sentence. Here, adverb clause is required because we're talking about a verb tear, right? An action. So, how are also here also dash along the edge. Look is a verb basically. Look is a verb. We're talking about a verb here. Now, under what condition the action in the sentence takes place. So looks closely would be the correct choice because it is adding information on how to look along the edge. So look closely along the edge will be correct. Look closely is the adverb clause, right? Correct. Since the given sentence is in simple present tense, verb should also be in the present tense form and only modify who can modify only of course adverb can modify verb, closure will be a noun, right? This will be a verb and looks looked obviously in simple present base form, this will be correct. Next one. Owing to the early days of the company dash, there are quite a few legacy connections to the account that have been severed. You can understand here which clause is required, a dependent clause, right? Now, when Marx was the sole employee of the company, here this will be the correct choice. Why? I'll explain, right? This one. When Marx was the sole employee. Here, owing to the early days of the company, we need a noun clause firstly, right? Sorry, we're describing noun. Basically, we are describing noun, so adjective clause is required. So, owing to the early, when Marx was the sole employee of the company. So here, additional information that we are adding on to this early days, owing to the early days. Additional information for early days, noun phrase, right? So C and D are incorrect because the sentence is referring to the time frame in the past. Here, was is given, can be the given. So this time frame is wrong. You can cancel this out. Which is used for thing, where is used for location, right? You understand this part, which is used for things, where is used for location. So in B part, it is incorrect when he is the employee, when is wrong, right? So these words are also wrong. Now, if you see B, it is incorrect because it is creating a mismatch between the tense of the sentence and the clause, right? Owing to the early days of the company, when he was the sole, he is wrong. He was the sole employee of the company. There are quite a few. So based on tense, we need an adjective clause. The correct adjective clause is given in option A. Why do we need adjective clause? Because in the previous sentence, we need a dependent clause which can give meaning to this, owing to the early days of the company. In order to be competitive with the Russians, the US would have to dramatically alter the way it approaches figure skating. Now, please understand, we are talking about people here, right? A subordinate clause is required, right? Which, of course, gives meaning to a independent clause. Now, who have dominated the sport would be correct. We're talking about people, right? And because it's the dependent clause that cannot form a sentence which is complete in its meaning. A and C are able to form the sentences which are complete in meanings on their own. They are tough to dominate in the sport. We don't need independent clauses. We need a dependent clause because we are giving meaning to the adding meaning to the given sentence. Independent clause not required. Cancel A and C. For people, for subject Russians, we will use who. Whom is for object. So this will be your answer. This one, whom is wrong because whom is used for object of the sentence. Here we are talking about Russians, which are the subject. So who is required? D will be the correct answer choice. Next, we can see the energy performance across every zone in the building. A coordinate clause that has meaning independent of the sentence if taken out of the sentence. But we see we are adding on to this. It is giving benefit, energy performance across every zone in the building. We can see that and optimize the system to perform better, right? Not given reason to in order to will be wrong, right? So here and optimize will be correct. And optimize the system to perform better would be the correct choice because it is the only independent clause. And here in the blank, independent clause is required among all the given options. All are dependent, right? We need an independent clause. Both George Louis Borges and Octavio Paz described this novel as perfect. Comma is used, which clause is required? Obviously, supporting one, right? Now, no, new, of course, clause can also be used after comma. That is not a rule. Okay, let's see the options. It's better to eliminate through option. Now, independent clauses, if you see. Okay, we are talking about both these persons described this novel as perfect. When I met them, since they are its authors, and I admit I can find much fault with it either, as soon as I did. Usually, after a comma, we use a separate independent clause, which can be used as a separate sentence having full thought and meaning. And I think only one fits this one. Remember, when I'm using or choosing independent clause, there can be words, conjunction words, which can be used to add two clauses. Here, and is used. So third is correct because we are not giving reason. Dependent since is not used, not giving time. Dependent when or as soon as is wrong. It is an independent clause required, which is only in option C. Next, here we are starting a statement. Okay, what is mentioned? By establishing a shared experience of place and time. Okay. Now, main clause is a clause that can form a complete sentence standing alone, having a subject and a predicate, right? So here, physical boundaries help define people is the main clause. Physical boundaries help define people. Sorry, this is physically boundaries you can't use. First one, physical boundaries help. In fact, plural, physical boundaries. So, I'm doing this question again. Okay, this one. You have the blank. So main clause is required, which will give meaning. Now, grammatically, you can just cancel. Physical boundary is singular, so help will be wrong. Boundaries is plural, but physically is wrong here. Physical boundaries is again plural, helps will be wrong. So just based on grammar errors, I know my clause will be this. Physical boundaries, because plural subject boundaries is given, I need a plural verb and plural verb is help, Without S, always remember the verb is plural. So help. Help define people. All other have grammar errors, so I cancelled based on that. So if it is clauses also, guys, remember you can always use grammar logics. In the Middle Ages dash, in the Middle Ages, comma. Now here, what is that you will fit here? Creating a book could take years is the main clause, which is complete in itself, where the subject is creating a book and could take years will become predicate. Now, other options, if you see, they are not able to have a complete meaning on their own, right? So, if, as, here, years before, these are all dependent clauses. Here, if we want a sentence which is independent, can give a separate complete meaning, only B option can fit, right? So, only B will be correct. So these were your clauses. Usually it is a tough one for students to understand because we don't yet generally cover it in parts of speech. If we study normal grammar, we'll do noun, pronoun, adjectives. Clauses is a separate part, a separate chapter. What you need basic initial is what I've covered in this session. You can go in detail, but this is what is required when you're doing the questions for this exam, particularly the basics. So do more questions. I would suggest more questions and clauses and you would know. If you have a general idea about independent difference and so what is subordinate, it is same as dependent clause. Why do we call adverbial or adjective based on their function? Because when they function as a noun, it becomes a noun clause. When they function as adverb, it becomes adverb clause. These basics, if you know, it's pretty much fine. Now you can focus on the type of questions that can be asked. Like some questions I eliminated through grammar errors. So this is what you have to practice. Okay. So this is it. Stay tuned with Olive Board and happy learning. Thank you.